Hello, this is part 2 of the child maltreatment or child abuse and neglect. And the next part that I was going to talk about was the meaning of the word discipline and the word punishment, and explain the difference between the two, because many people get these confused. The word discipline is derived from the word disciple. A disciple is one who is taught or guided. So discipline involves guiding children and teaching them how they should behave. Discipline corrects, shapes, or develops acceptable behavior patterns. Punishment is a negative response to what an observer considers to be wrong or inappropriate behavior. It may involve physical or harsh treatment. It teaches anger and violence. So there is a difference between discipline versus punishment. The next thing I want to talk about is the potential for abuse and neglect is thought to be the greatest when these three factors exist at approximately the same time. An adult with abusive tendencies, a vulnerable child because of certain characteristics, and I'll go into that in more detail, family or emotional stressors. Those are the three big things. Okay, so an adult with an abusive tendency is going to be one that has a history of fear, anger, rejection, low self-esteem, difficulty forming long-term relationships which can lead to social isolation, a lack of trust, potentially early marriage and pregnancy, maternal depression or post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, belief in harsh punishment or discipline for children, impulsive, poor anger control, a low stress tolerance, drug or alcohol addictions, and poor problem-solving abilities. Those are some examples of an adult with abusive tendencies. A vulnerable child, by age, they're vulnerable. Obviously, 5 and under are more vulnerable. Infants are very vulnerable. A disabled child or a disabled person. I know you all are training to work with early childhood, but I've had students when I worked in a different program that were going to be working with patients in a nursing home. It was nursing students, so the students were getting their CNA. So a disabled person could be an elderly person that's disabled basically due to age or whatever. Some other vulnerable tendencies or characteristics is temperament, poverty, gender, single parent family with an absent father, a child with a frequent chronic illness, and then a child that is gender nonconformity, which means they do not conform to their gender. Some family or environmental stressors can be stuff just like daily stressors, such as a flat tire, dead battery, lost keys, clogged sink, broken window, locked out of the house, leave your keys locked in the house, or locked out of the car. Unemployment or underemployment, which means you're underemployed means you have the ability to be employed in a better job, but you have to take a job that you're overqualified for. I guess is the opposite of underemployment. It's overqualified. Illness, injury, or death. Poverty, financial pressures, home foreclosure, partner violence, divorce or marital conflict. Birth of another child can be a stressor, especially when you've got 2 little ones or even more at the same time. Single parenting or military deployment. All right, so we have an adult that's predisposed, so an adult predisposition plus a vulnerable child plus stressors equals maltreatment. Not always, but these are things that can lead to the maltreatment of children. The most commonly recognized categories of maltreatment include physical abuse, emotional or verbal abuse, sexual abuse, physical neglect, and emotional or psychological neglect. Most states recognize 4 of those categories. The emotional and psychological neglect is not recognized in some states as a category of abuse and neglect. And we need to look up and find out what Georgia, if Georgia recognizes that or not. I meant to look that up, but I didn't. But we also will refer to our rules for child care learning centers to see, what is stated there. I do have a sheet. There again, it's in the car that I found when I was showing you all the Darkness to Light workbook. There is a sheet that I had tucked inside that book that talks about the Georgia requirements. But I will have to mention that in class because I don't have it with me right now. But back to physical abuse, we're going to talk about shaken baby syndrome because many of you may be working with children at that level because, like I said, early childhood covers birth through around age 7 or 8. So we prepare you all to work with children from birth to age 7 or 8, which would be about 2nd grade. Shaken baby syndrome, there's a webinar that we will watch. If you hear me talk about period of purple crying, purple is an acronym and it stands for something, but it's really a really interesting video that can explain a period in an infant's life that is a very vulnerable time for them to be abused, potentially. Failure to thrive, and you all that are working with infants you might come across this. An infant whose growth and mental development are seriously slowed due to the lack of nurturing and mental stimulation. Okay, as far as providing supportive environment for these children, how can we do this? I'm asking you guys. In our textbook, I did list these pages to refer to, 278, 279, and 282. And please see the chart at the bottom, 10-3 of 278. It gives some good tips. And the very last slide on Chapter 10's PowerPoint gives some good tips of how we, as early childhood teachers and people that are going to be working with students that may be coming from an abusive background, can be supportive to these students. Again, this is not an easy topic to deal with, but you all need to be able to recognize the symptoms because you may see these children. I mean, unfortunately they're everywhere, and a lot of times many of them go unnoticed and unreported. We definitely need to know what the reporting protocol is in the state of Georgia. We need to look that up and get really familiar with that. Like I said, that sheet is out there in the car because I didn't get all that stuff out when I got home because I was tired. And let me talk a little bit about the PowerPoint that you all will do. And again, if you want to do another something other than a PowerPoint, but, talk to me. But it's still, we've already had people do brochures. I'm just not sure how that's going to fit with our directions for the most important thing. I hope you all got the idea that the book that I read, it's a pattern book. It starts off the most important thing about, or in this case we will be saying the most important thing I learned about child abuse and neglect, or child maltreatment, whichever word you choose to use, is, and then you're going to go through and answer those questions based on what our rubric says, which you don't have yet, but there is a copy of it in Angel if you want to go ahead and look at it. I will provide copies. I know I said in the syllabus that the instructor is not responsible for providing copies, but I try to do that anyway, just to make it, because I want you guys to be putting these things in your course notebook, and that's something else we need to make sure we're doing, is everything that I'm giving you guys, plus some things, need to be going in that course notebook. But anyway, as far as the PowerPoint, the most important thing I learned about child abuse and neglect is, and you're going to tell me the answer to that based on what the rubric says, and then the last line is going to say, but the most important thing I learned. And the way the pattern the book goes is it goes back to whatever they said in the first line. The most important thing about a spoon is, and I don't remember what it says about the spoon, but then it comes back, but the most important thing about a spoon, and it says the same thing that it said at the very beginning. So if you say, the most important thing I learned about child abuse and neglect is that teachers are mandated reporters, then your last statement's going to be, your very last statement on your PowerPoint is going to be, but the most important thing I learned about child abuse and neglect, or if you want to say child maltreatment, is that teachers are mandated reporters. Or another example is, you could say, the most important thing I learned about child abuse and neglect is, and you could talk about a technique for working with a child that has been abused, and then you would come back at the end of your PowerPoint and say, but the most important thing about working with a child that has been abused and neglected is, and restate whatever you stated the first time about a technique or a strategy that you have learned about that would help as you work with a child that has been in that situation. I hope all that makes sense. The rubric is in Angel. I will provide you with a printed copy. I'm sorry to not get that done tonight. I think that's all. If you guys have any questions, please be sure you're reading over Chapter 10 in the textbook. I refer to a lot of charts, and there is a story that I mentioned tonight. I don't remember the page number. I think 275, but I don't remember. And like I said, my book's in the car. But it's about a child from a different culture. It's in a purple box at the top of the page. Make sure you read that, because we're going to be talking about those case studies when we come back next week. And that's a case study that I want us to all talk about together when we get ready to go into talking more about this abuse and neglect topic. So next week we're going to finish talking about our case studies and share our cinquain poems, and then we're going to move on into this next topic, and we'll probably start with that case study. Hope you have a great weekend. If you watch the video before the weekend, if not, see you next Thursday. Thanks. Bye.